Now, I was really excited about this movie before it came out because I love Superman. I love the character, and I grew up watching the old movies and all kinds of stuff like Superboy or Lois and Clark or even Smallville. I was not a fan of Zack Snyder's work, but I thought Watchmen was alright, and you know, the trailer looked amazing, so I was hyped. I'm serious, that trailer is just beautiful. It's perfect. It actually outclasses the actual movie by a mile. It's way better than the entire movie, and it's just like, because it's got that emotional punch and this grand heroism you kind of wanted to see. Watching the movie itself was honestly one of the worst experiences I've ever had at the cinema. I didn't walk out or anything, but I kind of wanted to. It was that bad. It was dull, it was dumb, it was ugly. Oh my god, the commenters are gonna call me dumb and dull and ugly, aren't they? God. Alright, just get it over and done with. But let's take a step back and let me talk to you a bit more specifically about why I didn't like it. When the film opens on Krypton and, you know, the whole planet's about to explode, I was kind of like, this is really silly, but I kind of like it. Everything about these first 5 minutes is crazily over the top, but, and this is the key, a lot of fun. There's never a dull moment while you're on Krypton. After that, it pretty much goes downhill from there. Michael Shannon was clearly the perfect choice to play General Zod, and I even liked Russell Crowe as Jor-El, and I didn't think I would. I was hoping and praying that that scene would set the tone for the rest of the movie. Not so. Before Clark becomes Superman, we get this kind of bland and very grey backstory where we see him when he's like really hairy at 30 or something, and this is intercut with memories from his childhood. Everything about all that is handled in the most pretentious way possible. Superman is not only bigger than Jesus, he's bigger than Jesus, the Beatles, he's bigger than everything. He's just treated like a friggin' saint. Everyone is super serious, you know, everyone is super wise in the way they talk, and the score is all miserable. There's really nothing likable about Clark or the people around him. We never get to really feel why this guy would want to become Superman. Oh, and don't get me started about Kevin Costner's death in the movie. There's just not enough time to cover that amount of stupid in one video. It just can't be done. Very briefly, I just want to say that I was 100% behind casting Henry Cavill as Superman. He just had the right look, and he seemed like a friendly guy in real life, and I thought this would translate well to Superman. He just made sense in that role. And yet, he's never really allowed to give a genuine performance in those movies. As Clark Kent, he's kind of bland and soulless, and as Superman, he comes off as just really smug and kind of clumsy, and he screams all the time. I can see what they were trying to do with the whole kind of gritty take on that story, but I just don't like it, and I don't think it actually works at all. Similarly, Amy Adams is one of the best actresses working today. She's pretty much amazing in everything except Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Her Lois Lane is not only boring and character free, but she never feels necessary, and the way her story is weaved into Man of Steel just doesn't make sense. Like how they make it so she knows who Superman is straight away instead of later on. That's not the story of Superman. The fact that she's a super smart reporter and yet she can't tell that Clark Kent is Superman, to me, is really important in that story. Not only because it creates a fun dynamic between those characters, but also because it brings a certain irony to that character, making the character interesting. She's so blinded by her love for Superman that she doesn't see what's right in front of her. You know, she doesn't even give Clark Kent a second look. If you make her meeting Superman the same as just if she met just some random guy, what's the point? Okay, let's talk about the villains for a second. Michael Shannon as Zod is fine. I really don't have any big problems with him. He's kind of one-dimensional and he just screams everything he says, but he's fun. Then there's that whole plot thread where he wants to get all the Kryptonian eggs inside of Clark for some reason. I don't know why. What? Yeah, all that stuff is dumb. The other villains are basically just copies of those two from Superman 2, and except they're boring now and completely forgettable. The only other casting choice, now that I think about it, that works in this movie, apart from Russell Crowe and Michael Shannon, is Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. Literally everyone else looks like they don't want to be there. I often hear people praising the visuals in this movie. Why? In my opinion, visually this is an ugly movie. It's so grey and lifeless. All of it. To be honest, I thought that was on purpose. I thought that once Clark becomes Superman, he becomes, the beacon of light that you expect, and you'll get, kind of a rush of color into the movie. No, they don't do that. Everything's muted and there's no reason for it. Except to make the film suck, I guess, but why would that be a goal? The action sequences, I'm sad to say, didn't work for me either. Just the way those Kryptonians move, it just never felt right. It's too fast. It's basically me doing this. It's not an interesting effect, And it's just a blur. It's just like a blurry CGI thing. And it makes the fight scenes look just foggy and blurry and fake. Say what you will about Superman Returns, I know everyone hates that movie, but this was a good looking film. And the few action sequences, or a couple of action sequences that were in it, looked great. They honestly looked pretty cool. They made a worse movie than Superman Returns. I'll let that sink in. The actual plot of the film is your typical doomsday machine type of plot. There's a big thing that's gonna destroy the Earth, and the superhero stops it at the end. That's pretty much it. It's same thing as Dark Knight Rises, same thing as Amazing Spider-Man, same thing as every superhero movie ever made. Except Superman manages to destroy Metropolis in the process, which doesn't usually happen in those movies, but some points for originality, I guess. Making Superman a mass murderer, but okay. See, people who defend Superman's actions in this movie by saying stuff like, it was his first mission, he didn't really know what he was doing, or hey, come on, he still saved the world, or this was all General Zod's doing, he's to blame. You're missing the point. Superman should care about people. We need to actually see him care about people. We need to see him enjoy being Superman. Get a sense of humor, crack a smile or something. You know how all comic book movies have a scene where the superhero shows up and saves a little girl from getting crushed by a pile of rocks, or joking around with a little kid? That's not an accident. It's because it helps the audience understand that it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, who you are, this guy wants to help you, and he'll be there if you need him. It's a pretty basic thing for a superhero to do in a movie because it's kind of important. There's pretty much none of that in this movie. He does, save a bus of kids at one point when he's really young, and he prevents an oil rig from just exploding with people inside it. But he's not doing it because he likes saving people. He's doing it because he can. And I think that's a big difference. Think about it this way. In the Die Hard movies, John McClane, in the first movie, he's having a really good time just taking the piss of Hans Gruber, destabilizing him completely. But then, if you look at Die Hard 4, he's kind of just like, he's just kind of grumpy, and then he's in the car with Justin Long, and he's just like, I do this because no one else will do it, It's just like, that's not John McClane, that's a big difference. This is a smug Superman who, granted, saves the world, but only because he's being pushed to the limit. For all this talk about humanity and how he's a god among men, but he's also very much a man, We don't really feel any of that. And Superman, to be honest, just comes off as weirdly vain and angry and not very smart. Even Frank Miller, who really likes to make things dark and edgy, understood the importance of portraying Superman as this colorful beacon of hope. Even if it was, taking the piss a little bit because he's Frank Miller. But he understood that you need to see that in Superman. Especially if you're gonna have him fighting the Dark Knight in the next movie. It's called contrast. What else? Oh yeah, Henry Cavill basically refuses to act any different when he's playing Clark Kent because, who cares? Lois Lane already knows who he is. Except no one else does. Oh, and I forgot to mention how bad the dialogues are in this movie. It's just like everyone's talking like inspirational quotes from values.com or something. Or like they're 12 years old, like that cop at the end who's just like, I think Superman's kinda hot. How much did this movie cost again? I guess that's why the movie doesn't have much humor in it. Could have been worse, I suppose. Overall, Man of Steel just rubbed me the wrong way, and it was a major disappointment. I wanted to see a modern take on Superman so badly, and when I did, it was just like, I just wanted to go back and watch Richard Donner's first movie just to get the taste out of this one out of my mouth. Superman should be glorious, he should be an inspiration, not this morose dude who, walks around saying he's got problems and just looks miserable all the time and has no personality or intelligence that I can see. Man of Steel, like I said, is not the worst thing ever. That's obviously Superman 3. But still. Anyway, sorry. Like and subscribe if you didn't like Man of Steel. Like me. And if you don't, just leave a comment, but a polite comment. Come on, we're not animals.